December 16th, 1907. The world's naval powers gathered at Hampton Roads, Virginia, watching in stunned silence as something impossible slid into the water. The USS Michigan wasn't just another battleship. She was a revolution wrapped in 16,000 tons of steel, a warship so radical that she made every other battleship on Earth obsolete the moment her keel touched the Atlantic. This is the story of how America rewrote the rules of naval warfare, how two battleships changed everything, and how the Dreadnought Revolution transformed the United States Navy from a coastal defense force into a global superpower. Before we dive into this transformation, we need to understand what naval warfare looked like at the turn of the 20th century. Picture this. Battleships of the early 1900s were floating contradictions, massive vessels carrying a bizarre mix of gun sizes. You'd have 4 huge 12-inch guns for long-range combat, 8 or 10 8-inch guns for medium range, and a dozen smaller 6-inch guns for close encounters. Naval architects called this the mixed battery system, and it seemed logical at the time. Different ranges needed different guns, right? Wrong. Catastrophically wrong. The problem became clear during the Russo-Japanese War of 1904 and 1905. At the Battle of Tsushima, ships fired thousands of shells at each other, and something terrifying became obvious. When multiple gun sizes fired simultaneously, spotting where your shots landed became nearly impossible. Imagine trying to adjust your aim when you can't tell which splashes belong to which guns. Add smoke, chaos, and the thunder of dozens of cannons, and you have a recipe for disaster. Ships were burning through ammunition without hitting anything. The mixed battery system wasn't just inefficient, it was deadly to the ships using it. Enter HMS Dreadnought, launched by Britain in 1906. She changed everything overnight with a radical concept called the all-big gun design. 10 12-inch guns, all the same size, all firing the same shells. Suddenly, fire control became manageable. Spotters could actually see where shots landed and make corrections. But here's what most people don't know. While Britain grabbed the headlines, American naval architects were already working on something even more revolutionary. The United States Navy had been watching, learning, and innovating. In 1903, even before Dreadnought was designed, American naval constructors were sketching plans for ships that would leap beyond anything the world had seen. These plans became the USS Michigan and her sister ship, the USS South Carolina. And while Britain built faster, America built smarter. Let's talk about what made these ships so special, starting with their technical specifications. The Michigan and South Carolina displaced 16,000 tons, making them substantial but not overwhelming. Their length reached 452 feet, with a beam of 80 feet and a draft of 24 feet. They carried a main armament that would become legendary. 8 12-inch, 45 caliber guns mounted in 4 twin turrets. But here's the revolutionary part, the placement of those turrets. Traditional battleship design placed turrets in a line from bow to stern, meaning only some guns could fire to either side at once. The American designers said no. They created a super firing arrangement, stacking turrets so the rear turret sat higher than the front turret. This meant both forward turrets could fire directly ahead, and both rear turrets could fire directly astern. More importantly, all 8 guns could fire broadside simultaneously. This gave Michigan and South Carolina a devastating advantage. They could bring their entire main battery to bear on a target regardless of angle. No other battleship in the world could match this firepower concentration. The armor scheme was equally innovative. The main belt armor ran 12 inches thick at its strongest point, tapering to 10 inches at the ends. The turret faces carried 12 inches of hardened steel. The deck armor, often overlooked but critical, ranged from 1.5 to 3 inches. This wasn't just protection. It was intelligently distributed protection, concentrated where it mattered most, reduced where it didn't, maximizing survivability without wasting tonnage. Power came from 2 vertical triple expansion steam engines generating 16,500 indicated horsepower. This drove the ships to a top speed of 18.5 knots. Now, critics love pointing out that Dreadnought was faster at 21 knots. But here's the strategic thinking the critics miss. American naval doctrine didn't prioritize speed. It prioritized firepower and protection. The Navy wasn't building ships to chase enemies across oceans. It was building ships to dominate specific tactical situations. And in that mission, Michigan and South Carolina excelled. The secondary armament consisted of 22 3-inch guns for defense against torpedo boats, the drones of their era. Anti-torpedo boat warfare was serious business. These fast, small vessels could theoretically swarm a battleship and sink it with lucky hits. The 3-inch guns provided a steel curtain against such threats. But the real genius lay in the fire control systems. This is where American innovation truly shined. The ships featured centralized fire control, a concept that sounds simple today, but was revolutionary then. A single officer in an armored spotting station high on the mast could observe the fall of shot and transmit corrections to all gun turrets simultaneously. The guns would fire in salvos, all together, creating a concentration of shells that made spotting and correction exponentially easier. When you saw 8 12-inch shells land, you knew exactly where your broadside hit. Adjust, fire again, and devastate your target. The optical rangefinders were cutting edge for their time, allowing accurate distance measurement up to 20,000 yards. Combined with mechanical calculators that factored in range, ship movement, wind, and target speed, these systems gave American gunners unprecedented accuracy. In trials, Michigan and South Carolina demonstrated they could land shells on target at ranges that would have been considered impossible just 5 years earlier. Now let's address the controversy that still echoes through naval history. Who actually invented the all-big gun battleship? Britain claims Dreadnought. America claims Michigan and South Carolina. The truth is nuanced and fascinating. The USS Michigan was authorized by Congress in March 1905, a full 8 months before HMS Dreadnought was laid down. Her design was complete before Dreadnought's keel was even laid. However, construction delays meant Dreadnought launched first in February 1906, while Michigan didn't launch until May 1908. So America designed it first, but Britain built it first. Both nations deserve credit for recognizing the future of naval warfare. But America deserves specific credit for the super-firing turret arrangement, which became the standard for every battleship built afterward worldwide. The impact of these ships on naval strategy cannot be overstated. Before Michigan and South Carolina, naval warfare doctrine assumed battles would be fought at relatively close ranges, maybe 6,000 to 8,000 yards, where different gun calibers made sense. The new American battleships changed that assumption completely. With their superior fire control and uniform armament, they could engage effectively at 15,000 to 20,000 yards. This tripled the combat envelope. Suddenly, naval tactics had to be completely rethought. Formations changed. Engagement procedures changed. Even the concept of what constituted naval victory changed. Other nations scrambled to respond. Britain immediately began planning super dreadnoughts. Germany accelerated its battleship program, triggering the Anglo-German naval race that became one of the contributing factors to World War I. Japan, fresh from its victory over Russia, studied the American designs intensely and incorporated super-firing turrets into its own battleship program. The entire global balance of power shifted because of engineering decisions made in American naval shipyards. The legacy of Michigan and South Carolina extends far beyond their service lives. They established design principles that dominated battleship construction for the next 40 years. Every American battleship from the Delaware class through the Iowa class incorporated super-firing turrets. The last battleships ever built, the Iowas commissioned in the 1940s, owed their basic gun arrangement to decisions made in 1903. That's how profound the revolution was. These ships proved that American naval architecture could compete with and exceed European expertise. They announced to the world that the United States Navy was no longer a regional force but a global power. And they did it not through aggressive expansion, but through superior engineering and innovative thinking. The Dreadnought Revolution wasn't just about bigger guns or thicker armor. It was about rethinking fundamental assumptions, about asking whether the way things had always been done was actually the best way to do them. The USS Michigan and USS South Carolina served honorably through World War I, though they never fired their guns in anger at an enemy ship. Their mere existence, however, contributed to American naval deterrence and power projection. They were sold for scrap in 1923 and 1924 respectively, victims of the Washington Naval Treaty's limits on battleship tonnage. But their influence lived on in every capital ship that followed. Today, as we look at modern naval warfare with guided missiles and carrier strike groups, it's easy to forget the battleship era, but the lessons remain relevant. Innovation beats tradition. Engineering excellence matters. And sometimes, the nation that takes time to design something right, rather than racing to build it first, creates something truly revolutionary. The Dreadnought Revolution that began with HMS Dreadnought was perfected by the USS Michigan and USS South Carolina. They changed naval warfare forever, and in doing so, they helped transform America into the naval superpower it remains today.